Welcome to CyberSync 2026. I'm Steve Shepherd. This is the Rosnet podcast stage. So this afternoon, I'm joined by two gentlemen. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, Steve. So my name's Paul Craig. I'm the CTO at Norm Cyber.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Richard Beeston, COO Digital Space.
Brilliant. Paul, Richard, thank you ever so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. You haven't had sight of these questions, so this is going to be quite interesting. So we're going to start off with threat landscape.
Yep.
Okay, threat landscape. So every organisation that I get to speak to as an individual comes up with a different answer to this question. So it's going to be interesting to see what you guys think. But what is keeping you up at night right now? What's the threat that feels most underestimated across the industry within the fields that you work?
Okay, yeah. So I'll jump in first. So I think it's an interesting question because I think press and headlines are dominated obviously by current geopolitical tensions, and I think a lot of boards are putting that higher up on the agenda. But what that tends to do is create blind spots within an organisation, and I think you only have to look at some of the recent large-scale breaches that we had. The biggest flaw in any cybersecurity strategy or posture is us. It's that soft, weak human interface between the keyboard and the chair. So making sure you're including the staff, your team members in those cybersecurity conversations, and that you're actually instilling a cybersecurity culture through the business is absolutely imperative, because I think that just gets overlooked. Very, very simple. It's kind of a tick box. We do cybersecurity training once a year. That's it. All my staff know what they need to do.
That's really interesting because that has been a theme throughout all of things.
I've got no disagreement with that. It's we can get carried away with technology and three-letter acronyms, but maintaining a constant cadence of awareness with colleagues and new colleagues into the business and people on boards who like to get emails that come to this great event, click here sort of stuff, and it's super tempting to click on those things. That low level kind of stuff that's been around for years, and as Paul said, has sort of gone under the headlines with these big brands getting attacked. Those are the things really that I think plugging away at on a day-to-day basis, that's kind of bread and butter work for us, really.
Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we instill that culture, especially if you've got a large organization?
Yeah.
How do we do that? Because I've worked for a number of organizations, and I will get the generic email that says I have to do my phishing training, and I click through.
Yeah.
And I get to the end and I'm like, yeah, thanks for that. How do we actually make a culture that allows people to make the business safer?
It needs a change from the top down. I think cyber today is still seen predominantly as an IT problem. It's a technical challenge, so it sits with the IT team, and that's not the right team if you want to endear a cybersecurity culture. It's got to come from the board, top down. It has to be ingrained in your HR and your personnel policies, and it's part of your onboarding of a team member. But it's constant. It has to come through. IT can enable that. They can provide the tools and the phishing emails and the simulations, etc. But that culture's got to be driven top down at the end of the day.
Yeah, and people, systems, process, right? So have the processes to support it. Regular training, like you say, systems that are hardened and secure by design. And then on the people side, like Paul's just said, it can't just be, smashing the admin team to do training. It has to be we are a company that takes our cyber resilience equally as important as we take our health and safety, as we take our, the diversity and inclusion sort of policies. It's got to be up there with the same kind of import within a business to say, this is what we do. It's not just an IT problem or an afterthought. It is part of how we conduct ourselves in an organization.
No, I think that makes absolutely perfect sense. Actually embedding it right into the thing. It's really thing. So obviously AI is pretty much everywhere. I think everybody's stamping AI on everything. I mean, you get toothbrushes now with AI implanted in them as well. but it is being deployed faster than sort of security teams can assess risks at the moment. It seems to be, the risks seem to be getting bigger and the time to deployment seems to be getting smaller. So how do we approach securing our own systems, and is AI part of that solution, or is it becoming a blocker to businesses?
I'll let you go first, sir.
No thinking time. So I think it's a very, very delicate balance, and some of that will be, based on company size. Large enterprises with huge cyber teams and all of that sort of stuff will have a particular view on it. Smaller, more agile businesses will behave differently, just as they do in many ways they conduct themselves. I think overall, again, like we've talked with the cyber culture, we have to accept that AI, in whatever way we mean it, isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's, like you say, it's on our glasses, it's on our phones, it's on everything. So we have to accept it. It's kind of part of society now. How are we going to deal with it? Well, look, we deal with things in the workplace all the time. So, with an engineering background, I couldn't bring my own tools in as an engineer. I had to have company provided tools because they met a specific standard. Similarly with AI, I see these different AIs and different agentic things as spanners and hammers in a toolbox. Well, can we use that spanner? Yep. Is that one there? Not quite. We can't use that one yet. So there's a bit of planning I think needs to happen. There's a bit of observation and continual monitoring within a business, which sounds a bit 1984, but we do that from a security, or we should be doing that from a security perspective anyway. And again, going back to your first question around the cyber culture, the careful and considerate use of AI and tooling should form part of that culture. It should be we choose to give you, I don't know, Copilot or Claude or whatever, because we believe as an organization that's the right thing for you to use. But we also think that other tools that are out there, we've not assessed them yet, so we don't want you using them. So I don't think it's a position where we should be going, no, we're absolutely not using it in any businesses, because I think really that's just going to put off talent within a business. People expect now to be able to use that tooling, even if it's just smartening up a presentation or creating an email that sounds a bit more professional. We kind of got used to using that now, and going, no, you can't use it, kind of takes you back 20 years ago to go, oh, you can't use your mobile phone while you're at work. I think that's a bit too much. But equally, having full board, just like, yeah, get out there and go for it, that's also not the right way to go.
Just before I come to yourself, it's actually really interesting because I think we're touching a bit on that shadow AI now.
Yeah, right.
Because, when a company closes itself completely down and does the no, you can't.
You'll enable shadow, yeah.
What everybody else does is circumnavigate that. Likewise for the company that sits there and goes, I don't really care, pulls it all short. And it's finding that balance.
And it's in no way different to, I don't know, you lock down certain things in your ERP system, so then everybody starts using Excel or something like that. And you go, I know we're allowed to use Excel, but it's still shadow IT, right? It's still off process. And the AI stuff will be no different than that unless we approach it with that mindset.
Yeah, no, I think following on from that, I think I see AI, the biggest risk in AI, I forget the headlines around the new models that are coming out that can create attack plans, etc. The biggest risk is just a lack of governance within an organization, and that lack of control. So you need to enable the users to use the tools. You need to make sure there are controls and there's guidelines, there's policies around what's an approved tool, what's not an approved tool. And likewise, what can you put into that AI model? You can put this kind of data in, but don't put this kind of data in. So it comes back to that systemic culture, training, education piece, and using the tool right. If you flip that then on the head around where the media is, cloud computing several years ago was going to be the biggest risk for every organization. Yeah. But again, uncontrolled adoption of cloud computing was the risk. If you had a strategy and a methodology to embed that into the organization and you embrace the technology, it prevented the shadow IT popping up around it prevented the uncontrolled costs, and you put the governance in place. So it's got to start with control first. And I think that's the most important aspect.
And that nicely segues right into the next for what does meaningful AI governance look like? What does it look like?
I've just Claude or something. I don't know.
Hang on, let's just ask Claude and see what it comes up with.
Therein lies the danger. Yeah. I think just wildly shooting from the hip, it would be similar to any other form of governance model, sitting down with key stakeholders from across a business. It's not an IT problem. It's a business problem to solve, sitting down and going, what do we think we want from AI in whatever shape or form we define AI in that particular business? What do we want to achieve with it? Can we achieve that? And how are we going to write policies and have change processes and all sorts of stuff in place that allow us to do that appropriately and grow successfully as businesses, but not enable the shadow AI or let scope creep come in. And, we'll find it uncovers all sorts of weird and wonderful and often boring things like, well, you should have had your data ready before you impacted that, or, oh, you didn't know you had all of that information over there. And it will bring out all sorts of things that will, again, come back to a governance group to go, well, should we have it having unadulterated access to SharePoint, or going through all of our emails, or, do we need to look at some ongoing security policies that let us define, oh, that user's trying to access that thing, well, they shouldn't really be doing that. So does it actually impact not only how we use AI, but how we think about using cyber tools, how we augment our network visibility, all of those things possibly bubble to the surface when we start talking about it. But the initial discord is not an IT one. Could be IT led, but what finance want from AI versus operational teams versus human resources will be wildly different.
Absolutely.
I think following on from Richard's point, governance comes in two parts. So it's the policy, the procedural side of things. That's quite easy. Most ISO 27K organizations will have an InfoSec policy, and it's just an adaptation of that at the end of the day. But people do bad things, right? Or not even bad things. People do things that, people do things that make their life a lot easier at the end of the day. And I think one of the challenges with AI, and Richard touched upon it earlier, is AI is everywhere. So it's that whole consumerization of AI. People expect to be able to use it to fulfill their job. And if they're not allowed to do it, then they'll circumvent that. So making sure you've got controls within the environment to monitor how AI is being used and the deviations from that policy is absolutely imperative as well. So set the governance, set the policy, but then make sure you've got the controls to catch that behavioral pattern across the environment as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I mean, that's really good. So I'm going to take you back to the people, because I think people's quite interesting. And actually, it's a running theme through all this. So, you've actually hit it and articulated really well, which is it's not the tech, it's the people, which is brilliant. So we're being told by the media that there's a talent shortage in cybersecurity. Yeah. There's all these sort of things going around at the moment. What are you seeing? Is this true or isn't it true? And if it is true, what's the approach to getting talent into the sort of environments you are in and the skills you need?
We partner together, our organizations partner together. So
right.
We have a set of skills, highly accredited people with cyber skills, medium accredited, and some people who are early to career who want to learn. And we're bringing those along on a path. But we recognize as a managed service provider that unfortunately we couldn't click our fingers overnight and turn on 20 cyber experts and have them busy enough. So we actually work with our colleagues at Norm to create a joint go-to-market proposition for our customers. So we've had to think of creative ways to bring in talent to our business whilst also nurturing existing talent, so we're not completely barren of it ourselves. I think
really interesting. I think the idea of actually partnering up and making that work.
Yeah.
It's nice to actually see and everything like
Yeah,
that.
and a lot of the solutions that we provide are kind of security-led solutions, even if they're networking or cloud solutions. You can't really deploy them without thinking about security. So the natural sort of way vendor accreditations and professional certification are moving is to have more of a security element within them. But we certainly need to harness Norm's talents to help us deliver a well-rounded proposition.
Yeah, and I think for us, we as an organization are focused purely on delivering those MSSP services. So actually acquiring new talent into the organization and then growing the talent through the organization has never really been a challenge for us. And I think the reason being is because we can offer the breadth and diversity across that cybersecurity spectrum, we can find interesting, engaging work for people. I think it is tough for a single organization to attract talent, because they'll be looking there saying like, I want the next step. I want to get into a role, and in 6 months I want to be doing something else. I either want to be going into the red team and looking at offensive side of networking, or get further into the defensive. When you're a focused MSSP, you can give them those career paths that get capillary out. But I think if you're just looking for a single entity, a single enterprise organization, then it is hard to attract that. And not only attract, but most importantly, retain. Yeah, and then it becomes an expense because you're constantly recruiting, and you get no stability within the organization.
So just taking it down from where you are, because I'm really interested in children, young people, education, and where they go to. What do you see that pathway? Are we getting it right at the basic level at the moment, or do we need to have a real fundamental shift in what we educate so that we are getting that talent coming through?
It's getting better, and I'm the father of 3 girls, so actually this subject quite close to my heart. Schools are getting better. They're introducing IT. They're making it more accessible, particularly to females as well. So that the whole STEM approach is being brought into schools. But then for some reason, something does happen when you go from most probably junior into senior. There does seem to be a shift that a lot of the girls do pivot away from STEM-based subjects, and the boys become more dominant. Within our organisation, I think we're most probably around about 20% females within the organisation. And we make a strong policy of recruiting the right individual for the right role. But you do get some absolute superstars for the girls, but it's not there yet. It does need a change in that culture, and it's got to start at grassroots. It's got to start within the schools.
100%. Yeah, I've got quite a few colleagues who have spent a lot of time in STEM environments, promoting young ladies coming through into the IT sector, whether it's cyber or not. It is a challenge that Paul adequately described in terms of junior school seems fine. They do a lot of training. They do a lot of education. Do a lot of education on the risks of it and all that. And then secondary school, something seems to be a boys do this and girls do that thing, which I feel is a bit of a miss. I've got 2 young lads, so I'm perhaps on the other side of the fence. We've got different challenges in our household with software-defined rules all around the house to stop them getting on various things late at night, and playing games with the mates till whatever time in the morning. But they are, as 15 and 13 as they are now, much more aware of IT and cyber as I was all those years ago. But equally, one of them wants to explore a career in it, and that's not come from me particularly pushing it. That's come through school, him taking an active interest in it, and he specifically called out cyber because they've done work on that in school, which I think that's great. Whatever form of work he goes into, cyber, as we've discussed earlier, is going to have an impact on your working life, whether he goes into photography or anything. That if you're working somewhere, you are
Cyber's a
Cyber's
part of
a
daily
thing,
life.
yeah. Just like not cutting your finger open when you open a box. You know,
Absolutely.
it's there, yeah.
Gentlemen, one final question then, the same that's asked to everybody on every podcast, is this. Looking ahead for the next 12 months, what is the one thing you think in your industry needs to get right over the next 12 months? What's the one thing that you would prioritize to get right over the next 12 months?
So from my perspective, I think the biggest challenge that we have as an industry is the lack of regulation across the industry. So cyber still very much sits in a should category rather than a must. And we humans are quite slow to adapt to change. And unless we're being told to do something, then we tend to find other things to do and other projects to work on, etc. So we're starting to see it. The UK government are obviously looking at pushing through the cybersecurity resiliency bill. That's the first step. But we need more regulation to drive behaviour. At the moment, cyber's that conversation. It's sat at the board. It's super imperative. But actually, until you get a catalyst, and unfortunately that catalyst does tend to be a breach more so than someone doing the right thing, it's an agenda item rather than an actual deliverable and a necessity. So regulation, I think, is absolutely imperative.
I, similar to Paul, I think Norm have done a good white paper recently on a bit deeper into this subject. I think board rooms need to take cyber a bit more seriously. So I think, looking at the metrics most boards report on, you've got a couple of finance things, a couple of customer satisfaction things, traditional KPIs of a business. I think every board should have a cyber KPI in there that is completely demystified from 3-letter acronyms and techno jargon and, whatever else you want to put in there, and should everybody on the board and within the ownership community of that business should understand the health at any point in time of that business. Cyber is, I think Paul was leaning into it. We kind of see it as a bit of a yearly MOT. Yeah, you've passed your
Tick box exercise. Surely not.
You've passed your thing. You've done your ISO accreditation. Great. You've done your cyber accreditation. See you next year. Kind of not how the world works, and it's certainly not how cyber's changing. And I think the big thing for boards to do is every board meeting, even if it's green, great, it's green. You can't manage it if you don't measure it. So it should be on every board agenda.
Brilliant. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much. It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. It's been really good and touched on some different things. It's been really enlightening. You've been listening to CyberSync 2026. I'm Steve Shepherd. We'll be back shortly.